As we take a deep breath and center ourselves for this morning's service, may the sound of our peace bowl unite us in our collective concerns over civil unrest in our nation and in our world. For the sake of democracy and our citizen neighbors, may we replace injustice and lawlessness with unity and safety, hope and peace for our country and for the world. And here at home, we acknowledge that these beloved lands in which we live are the unceded, ancestral, and historical lands of the Yavapai people. And good morning. It's wonderful to see so many smiling faces on this picture-perfect morning here in Prescott. We extend a Granite Peak welcome to all of you who are here in person and to those of us who are here on Zoom. Hi, Martin. We're waving at you, too. So thanks to Zoomies for being here as well. I'm Bobby Bollinger, she, her, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. This morning, Reverend Michelle is going to share some thoughts around the concept of radical salvation, a topic not often addressed in Unitarian Universalist pulpits. We will learn together while we hear about the concept that humans have free will and may be able to affect their own salvation. But what if it is not ourselves we are meant to save? Think about that as we're listening to our gathering music.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Michelle LaGrave, she, her, and I'm the minister here at Granite Peak. If you are visiting with us for the first time today, or you're still kind of newish, I'd like to extend to you a very special and warm welcome. And if you want, I invite you to stand up or wave your hands around so we can all say welcome to you. Any new folks today? Newish folks today? Yay! Welcome! And also, I want to share that yesterday we had a new members introductory class, and we had 6 new people sign the book. 7 new people signed the book. All right. I guess I can't count. If any of you are here this morning and want to stand up, then let's meet some of our new members. And later this spring, we will have a new member welcome in the sanctuary where we can have a special little ritual around welcoming people officially to the congregation. But we're glad you're all here. So, for those of you who are not here for the very first time today, you may have noticed some changes in how we are doing things. The worship committee and staff have been talking for a couple of months now about how best to handle our orders of service. I know that you used to not do much in the way of orders of service when you were in the old sanctuary before the remodel, but then you went, if I understand the history of the orders of service correctly, went back to them when you were in the Davis Hall, and then we continued them here for a while. Anyways, so this is an announcement about how we communicate and do orders of service, and some of which you already know about announcements. So in addition, I've recently returned from a week with colleagues, and I've brought back with me some new and some old ideas about how to increase accessibility while also decreasing the amount of paper we use. You can see how all these needs are a little contradictory already, right? Additionally, the office staff, that's Kelly and I, have been collecting comments for a few months now about how you all best like to find out about what is going on in Granite Peak. So here is what we have learned so far and how we're going to try to balance all of these various needs and perspectives. First of all, most of you dislike verbal announcements at the beginning of the Sunday service. My apologies for this one. And some of you dislike verbal announcements at the beginning of worship with a passion. Most of you like either paper or electronic announcements, and one of you would like to get them by text message. We don't have the technology for that one at this point, so text messages aren't going to happen anytime soon. So here's the plan. It's a plan, it's a new plan, and there might be some blips here and there, but we're going to get through it all right. I know change is hard. On Sunday morning, those who are signed up for electronic communications will receive an email with the Zoom link, as well as links for the order of service and the announcements. It'll be up to you whether you want to print them or not. For those who are physically here on Sunday morning, there will be some large print orders of service available for those who need them. Not a whole lot, but hopefully enough. People who might need them include those who are blind or have low vision. We have designed them intentionally and Expect that they will be able to work with screen readers. If they don't, let us know. Or people who are neurodivergent, or people who don't have access to printers or smartphones, and more. It'll be up to you to decide if you're one of the people who needs those already pre-printed large print orders of service or not. We will trust that people know how to meet their own needs, while also printing less to conserve paper. We also have a QR code available that links to both the order of service and the announcements. There are slips of paper out in the foyer, and they are pretty easy to use if you've never used one before. You basically go and take a photo of the QR code with your smartphone, and then it pops up with a little link, and you just push on the link. And then that takes you to the place where you can choose whether you want to see the order of service or the announcements. Again, we expect these electronic versions to work with screen readers. And we're still figuring out how and where all to post the QR codes, but we're planning on having them all over, not just right there in the foyer. For those who are hard of hearing, we are recommending for now using a smartphone app such as Google Transcribe, Otter, or Whisper to get speech directly transcribed to your phone. And we think that Kelly will probably do a class on that at some point, so look out for that. Slides with announcements will continue to play before the service, and slides during the service will continue to announce what is coming next and display unison readings and hymn lyrics. And as always, you'll have electronic announcements in the form of the weekly peek and the monthly view, as well as a few paper versions of the monthly view available in the foyer. If you're not on the email list, you can email office@prescottuu.org and ask how to be signed up. Lastly, I'll begin sharing some additional information in my introduction, describing my identity, as well as highlighting some visual cues for those who might find it helpful. Keep in mind that while not all of this is for everybody, all of this is for somebody. We are learning how to best meet each other's needs as an act of love and of caring. We care for each other, and we need each other, and we want to bring as many people along with us as possible. So again, I'm the Reverend Michelle LaGrave, the minister of this congregation. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white, middle-aged, Gen Xer, queer, disabled woman. I am wearing all black with a beautiful blue stole with a shining sun. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whether you've walked in or rolled in or zoomed in, whichever your pronouns, whomever you love, you are welcome here. You belong here.
We now join other Unitarian Universalist congregations worldwide in the tradition of lighting our chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Mel Ditzler. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice.
We are seekers on a quest to discover truth and meaning. Sometimes we think we found it, wrapped up, glimmering with newness, straight off the intellectual assembly line. All the answers right here for us, and others if they'd only listen. But truth has a way of coming in disguise, sometimes wearing rags and sometimes finery, but so often cloaked from our immediate sight. And sometimes that which we have rejected, that which we have let go of, or decided was only for others, but not us, can be our teacher. Let this time of worship, our time of worship, be an acknowledgement of the never-ending journey toward truth and meaning, and our appreciation of those we learn from along the way. Now let us rise either in body or spirit and sing together our first hymn, which is number 145. Hymnals off to the side if you want one. The words will appear on the screen as Tranquil Streams.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thoughts and lifeless greed, free from the social code that fails to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
And now we'll have a stewardship moment from the Morans.
Grand Peak since 2020. Good morning, I'm Patrick Moran.
And I'm Rebecca Moran from Preston Valley.
We have been members of Grand Peak since 2020, when we moved here full 4.
We were members of another union congregation in Panama Beach.
We have been many places as veterans and have done 2 tours of Peace Corps.
In this congregation, we both wore many hats. I've been a member and vice president of the board of trustees.
We also volunteer on the Social Justice Council. Whenever we can, we volunteer for special events.
Our values reflect the values of modern Unitarian Universalism.
We are proud to be members of a congregation that welcomes everyone.
And recognizes our interdependence with the world around us.
We are peace lovers. We protest and march when
the lights are threatened. We believe in this congregation's mission.
Since joining Granite Peak, we have always pledged our financial support.
It's important to support this congregation's mission. All the events held here need support. Things like empty bowls, the food pantry, any protesting around town, you're right there for it. Faith development, many courses that are taught by members of the congregation here. We promote equality and justice for all, and we can't do it without you. Please be as generous as possible. Granite Peak is counting on you.
I see we're getting fancy with our videos. We got unison readings and slides and everything now. Wow. Please join me in the saying of the words to our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is sacrament, and service is prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, thus do we covenant together.
As we move toward the ritual of our morning offering, may we recognize that our financial support of Granite Peak enables us to live out our values. And those values filter out into the lives of the greater Prescott area. In addition to your gifts for the workings of this congregation, we simultaneously collect funds for community nonprofits through our Seeds of Support program. February's recipient is the PRISM Network, and you may read about them in your orders of service, which most of you don't have. But you will have them soon. And if you wish your check to go exclusively to PRISM, please note that on the memo line of your check. For you folks on Zoom, your donations may be made through prescottuu.org. The morning offering will now be taken. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through this offering. What is given in love is received with much gratitude. Blessed be.
Please find a comfortable place in your seats, whatever that means for you and your body. Might even mean not in the seat at all and on the floor. It might mean placing your feet or some part of your body in contact with the floor so that you might feel grounded, more connected to the earth, which nourishes and sustains us all. It might mean closing your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, or taking a deep breath in. As together we enter into a time of spoken meditation followed by silence. By what are you saved? And how? Saved like a bit of string tucked away in the drawer? Saved like a child rushed from a burning building, already singed and coughing smoke? Or are you salvaged like a car part, the one good door when the rest is wrecked? Do you believe me when I say you are neither salvaged nor saved, but salved, anointed by gentle hands where you are most tender? Haven't you seen the way snow curls down like a fresh sheet? How it covers everything, makes everything beautiful without exception. Amen, and blessed be.
In recognizing the humanity in us all, we acknowledge that when we gather together, we often bring with us grief or joys or remembrances that are personal and deeply meaningful. Let us now take some time to silently recognize these joys and concerns that may be in your hearts or on your minds. We will share a time of meditation and music, and if you are so moved, feel free to come forward and place a stone in one of our two bowls to recognize and honor that which you are carrying with you. I will place the first stone today in joy for the arrival of Tracy Powers and Stephen Lovejoy's grandson, born to Tracy's daughter and son-in-law in British Columbia, apparently in the parking lot of the hospital. Congratulations, Tracy and Stephen. May the joys and concerns expressed by each of us be enveloped in love and caring by our beloved community. Blessed be. Please join me now in singing Spirit of Life. Our reading this morning is Don't Argue with Salvation by Alex Jensen. Don't argue with salvation when it arrives on your shores. Don't try to dismiss or deny it. Give it your undivided attention. Do not be ashamed of how or why or when you've found it. Your journey has been sacred. Greet salvation as an old, welcomed guest. Meet it not with fanfare or pomp. Instead, put the kettle on to boil, pull up a chair, and let it speak life to you. Find the tender parts of your body and soul that are warmed by its words. Do not argue with salvation when it arrives at your door. Bid it wide welcome. Don't be ashamed of where the path has led. Don't be embarrassed from all the detours or the missed plans. Don't be shy about what it is that feeds you, that nourishes and refreshes your soul. Don't be ashamed with how it greets you, instead welcoming you in its warm embrace. How could it be anything different? Don't argue with salvation when it stirs in your heart, when it brings you to act for others, when it calls you to street corners and picket lines. Don't question it too harshly to the point of missing it as it passes through. Relish it with every glimpse. Savor it with every taste of hope and good news. Don't be afraid to bring that blessed good news to others, to let your beautiful body carry its light through heavy burden. Don't be afraid when its saving power destroys just as much as it rebuilds, uplifts, and renews. Don't argue with salvation when it finds you when you least expect it, in an empty parking lot, on the kitchen floor, in the eyes and the arms of a beloved. Don't try too hard to count in many ways. They are immeasurable. Don't exhaust yourself with naming it in words that fail to grasp it with loose fingers. Surrender in those moments when you find yourself in its presence. Yield to it with an open clay heart ready for molding. Don't try to shut it out too soon or to run too far from it. It won't make you stay. Indeed, it can't. But it sure wishes to welcome you home. Don't argue with salvation when it saves your life, when it harbors your soul from great pain and harm, when it stays with you in the midst of the storm. Don't give up on it too soon if it arrives a bit later than expected. I promise it's working on it. Don't be too angry with it if it doesn't look like you expect. Love it as you love your best self. Love it as your worst self. We could all use more grace. Serve it with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Don't worry about its fragility. If it truly can take or bear the trials ahead of you and already in your midst, it is so much stronger than you think.
So today, we're going to talk about salvation. The first thing that might come to mind is our history of Universalism, our Universalist faith tradition, which is one of the two faith traditions that formed us into our contemporary Unitarian Universalists. So I want to acknowledge that place in our history. The ideas of universalism are long. They were probably not first articulated by our church father Origen, because there's always people who don't get credit or don't live on through history. But he was certainly one of the earliest in Christianity. And, by the way, was later excommunicated a couple centuries after his death when the Pope changed his mind and decided it wasn't a good idea after all. In our modern United States Unitarian Universalist history, you may have heard of Hosea Ballou, who was a famous Universalist minister from southern Vermont, north central Massachusetts area. He was what was called an ultra-universalist, which meant that he thought that as soon as people died, they were immediately redeemed. There was nothing in between death and immediate redemption from sin. There were other Universalists who were considered restorationists, and they thought that there might be a period of time in between death and that ultimate redemption from sin that might sound a little bit like purgatory in terms of purifying people from sin. However, with purgatory, there is that question of which way you're going. And there wasn't in Universalism. It was definitely redemption and heaven that you were headed to. So now I like to say that our Universalist heritage has taught us that whatever it is that happens after death, whatever the afterlife is or isn't, is the same for everyone. Because our ideas have broadened and changed over time. However, what I really want to talk about today is our history of salvation in terms of Unitarianism. Unitarianism and Universalism had a lot in common. There was a lot of movement back and forth. Ministers changed from one denomination to the other. So did people. Universalists developed Unitarian theology in time. Unitarians developed Universalist theology in time, until eventually they both became part of what was known as the liberal churches of America. And there were definitely churches at that point. I want to go back to the beginnings of Unitarianism in this country with William Ellery Channing. How many of you have heard of him before? Good. A good number of you have heard of him, and for a lot of you, this is new. So the Reverend William Ellery Channing was a Unitarian minister who was involved in that process of theology shifting in old New England in the late 1700s and early 1800s, in which they ultimately left behind Calvinism and predestination. And I'll talk about what those are in just a moment. The Unitarians became separated from the congregational churches in New England. I don't want to say they want to come out of, because sometimes the congregational churches, Orthodox people, came out of the Unitarian churches, depending on which direction the people and their ministers went in their theology, was who got to stay and keep the church building and keep the silver. And sometimes it was the Unitarians, and sometimes it was the Orthodox congregational Calvinists. So at this time, there was a lot of mudslinging at the Unitarians, including giving them the name Unitarian, which was meant to be a mean kind of name or a soundbite sort of thing at best. However, the Unitarians embraced it. The Unitarian piece was really about the unity of God and rejecting the idea of the Trinity with God in three persons. The Unitarians said, no, no way. God is one and simply one, and this Trinity stuff doesn't really make any sense. Keep going out a little bit here on the sound. So eventually it came time that William Ellery Channing, I don't know why he chose an ordination sermon, but he did. There was a guy in Baltimore, Maryland, who was about to get ordained, and during that worship service in which he was ordained, Channing gave the sermon, and he used the opportunity to articulate in 5 points what it was that brought Unitarians together in theology. In that sermon, he rejected the horror, I want to emphasize that, the absolute horror of total depravity, of humans having a corrupt nature, including original sin, but not limited to original sin, like thoroughly corrupt human nature. Imagine living under that kind of weight. He also rejected the idea of limited atonement and predestination that was existent under Calvinism at the time. They said no to this idea that there were only a few people who were ultimately saved after death, and that most of the people were going to be damned to hell. He also rejected the idea that God decided who was going to heaven or hell, not only long before you were born, but long before people in the world was even created. He knew who was going to heaven, who was going to hell. So Unitarians said, no way, that's not how it works. In fact, Channing outlined this idea of human free will. Simply put, he said that there is such a thing as human free will, and that humans have the power to effect, with an E, their own salvation under the influence of God's guidance, of course. That they could choose good deeds or misdeeds to help in their path towards redemption from sin. That they could change their nature and become better people if they wanted to. Whereas predestination said, nope, you're born evil and that's it. No matter what you do, it's try to do, you can't get out of it. He said that in more theological language, he said that the foundation of virtue is actually found in the human power of forming our temper and our life according to our conscience. That God creating us or forcing us to be good is not morality and is not actually virtuous. And this is a direct quote. We believe that no dispositions infused into us without our own moral activity are of the nature of virtue. And therefore, we reject the doctrine of irresistible divine influence on the human mind. And with a final twist, because Channing was really good at those, he also said that predestination without free will actually puts all of humanity's evil deeds back onto God, essentially arguing that God carries the blame for all evil deeds because he created people to be evil and do evil and did not give them the possibility of changing that or doing anything different. You can imagine how that might have gone over in 1819. It was radical, absolutely radical articulation of what salvation could be and could mean for the time period. We tend to do that sort of thing. What I want to point out is that not only was the changing of the definition of salvation and how we get there and of human nature important and salvific and healing, but the message itself was salvific and healing. I want to talk a little bit about the process of spiritual healing, how I see it at work, how I encourage people to go through the stages and process it. I think that it begins with reframing in a similar way that you might be familiar with the psychological concept of reframing. If you've been in therapy, you might have had therapists who are doing this, or with you, or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. But this in the more theological framework or philosophical framework in terms of how it is that we think about what is really true, what is ultimately true about the world and the cosmos and of life. I think that reframing comes first, or redefining, if you'd like. And Channing's change in how salvation worked was a huge accomplishment in terms of reframing, or coming up with a more beneficial definition of salvation. The next step is reclaiming. All of these are a choice, of course. Reframe and then reclaim. Kind of like us queer folks have reclaimed the word queer, us Unitarian Universalists, if we want to, can choose to reclaim some big theological words like salvation. We are a tradition of come-outers. Someone else had a funnier word for that at the membership class yesterday. I don't remember what it was. Was it Lydia? We're the church of the dropouts, she said. We've dropped out of Catholicism, evangelical Protestantism, mainstream Protestantism, all sorts of different places. We might bring our Buddhism with us. We might bring some of our Judaism with us. It depends. And so that means that because so many of us come to Unitarianism and Universalism as adults, it means that sometimes we bring a bunch of spiritual baggage with us that might be in need of some healing. So we can begin with reframing these words, and I'm going to talk about that a little more specifically with salvation later, but we can use that especially in our hearing. When we hear other people talk about salvation or redemption or sin or any of those other big words, if we have done the work of reframing, then what we can do is translate instantly in our heads into our own language and what we mean by that. God would be a big one that we might need to translate. Lisa DeLeo, who is our current seminarian at Meadville Lombard, is learning how to do this a lot because some of her classes are involving people from other faith traditions. When we are out there on the public square, we are learning how to do that a lot. We can reject it. We can simply reject all this language. To me, it feels like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. All of you may make different choices, but for me, as a religious leader, I feel like it is critical to keep the powerful theological language and to use it when I am speaking in public. I absolutely refuse to give over words like God to the religious right. They don't get to own that word and they don't get to define it. It's not all theirs. It's mine too, and it could be yours if you want it. When we continue with the process of reclaiming, like I said with the word queer, that means we've entered into sort of a new phase where we actually use that language ourselves, where we're not just hearing people use the word salvation and translating it to what we mean, but we're also using the word salvation when we talk with other people, or perhaps the word salvific. So this process, again, is all about choices. We determine for ourselves what it is that we think and believe. We determine for ourselves what kind of spiritual work we want to engage or not, and whether it would be helpful on our journey, and when. It might not be helpful today, but maybe it will 10 or 15 years from now. We don't know. So I'm going to move away from salvation for a moment because I want to talk about reframing and reclaiming, and I really love this story. It comes from the Bible, from the book of Joshua, and it's about the city of Jericho. I am sure you have all likely heard the phrase about the walls of Jericho come tumbling down. Does that sound familiar if you don't know all the details of the story? So this is after leaving Moses behind on the other side of the Jordan. The Israelites have crossed, the waters have parted, the Israelites have crossed. They're in the land, the promised land, the land of milk and honey, and they're on this massive conquest, which, by the way, most scholars are absolutely convinced is not historical. But back to the story. The first city they come to is Jericho. And in the Bible, the story says that it's filled with people. There's a prostitute who's a heroine, because in the Bible, the people who are the least of these are always the heroes and the heroines. And the Israelites are told by God how to take over this city as part of their promised land. I have a hard time not telling this story without smiling. So this is how it comes out in the Bible, in the NRSV-UE. Now Jericho was shut up inside and out because of the Israelites. No one came out and no one went in. The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its kings and soldiers. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days, with 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpets. When they make a long blast with the ram's horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall charge straight ahead." Now the problem comes when the archaeologists show up and discover that, yes, Jericho had come tumbling down. The walls had sort of exploded outwards. Almost all of the walls had crumbled down. The city had been burned to the ground, There were even foodstuffs that had been burned. They didn't even try to salvage the food, whoever had done this to this city. However, they radiocarbon dated it and found out that it happened 300 to 500 years before the Israelites showed up. And this event happened 700 years before it was ever written down. 700. Imagine telling a story for 700 years before writing it down. It's the way that I like to reframe and reclaim this story in a lot of the Bible is by thinking they didn't have this modern discipline of history like we do, where we think about it as we might be able to get some idea of facts of what had actually happened and lead to some sort of historical truth, although postmodernism is putting a little bit of a ding in that. In any case, they didn't have those perspectives on history. They were telling theological stories. They were telling traditional stories. People were moving around the wilderness. They were hosting people from other cities, other areas as they traveled around. This was actually a life-saving act of hospitality because this is desert wilderness territory and people needed water and food. And so hosting strangers in your home was not at all unusual. And you expected to have the same happen when you traveled yourself. And I imagine them sitting around the cook fire, sitting around the campfire, telling the stories, and the stories growing and growing and growing as they tend to do, even when we tell them in our own lifetimes, right? But 700 years worth of growing them before they get written down. So this story of early Israelites coming upon an empty city, or at least a city with very few people around, that had actually been burned to the ground and walls had tumbled down. And then the people marched and the priests blew horns and the Ark of the Covenant was carried in circles. Like you can imagine how these stories came into place. And part of my reframing and my reclaiming is paying attention to what I feel about the stories after I have done this work. I feel gratitude to learn that it wasn't actually a horrendous battle. I feel gratitude for the discipline of archaeology, which has given me some perspective on this story in addition to the scriptural story. And I feel awe. I feel an immense amount of awe for the amount of time that these stories have been told, and that I am part of such a long tradition. The story of Joshua has been told for almost 3,500 years, and I just told it again today. We're bringing very different meaning to it than people have from other time periods, but it's still here. And to me, that is just full of awe. So, that's my example of how reframing, reclaiming might work. I'm sure many of you have done much of this work already. I have much more of it ahead of me to do, although I was lucky that I came out of a tradition that did not cause me spiritual harm. That is not true for many of the people who are sitting in the room. which might make it even more difficult to even hear me tell this story, and I acknowledge that. So back to salvation. To my mind, I think there are two forms of salvation. One is personal and the other is communal. And I'm not going to suggest if or how you might reclaim it, but I'll talk a little bit about I'm not going to direct. I'll suggest a few things to think about. These are questions, some of them that you might want to spend time with later in pondering or journaling or drawing or whatever, meditating, whatever your spiritual practices are. For you, personally, what is salvific? S-A-L-V-E, as in our reading, -I-F-I-C, as in a salve or a balm to your soul. What is salvific? Or what is salvific? S-A-L-V-I-F-I-C, as in life-giving, as in right here, right now, here on this earth and in this lifetime kind of salvation. What is life-giving to you personally? What saves you? This is important, more important than ever now. Our world is on fire. Our democracy is crumbling. We're spending time resisting and protesting and doing all the things. How are we going to get through it? How are you going to get through it? What saves you? We all need to know this answer or figure it out if we don't know it yet. For me, experiencing the transcendence of nature, of the moon and the stars, the oceans and the mountains, experiencing that feeling of being really small, of being inconsequential relative to the vastness of the universe and the vastness of time, is salvific. For me, the immanence of the love that is present in my life is salvific. I'm looking at my mom, who is here. Because I'm queer, I first came out to her in my 30s, brought home a girlfriend, who less than a year later came out as trans and transitioned to a trans man. She not only allowed us to live with her during that whole year of transition, but supported us in every way imaginable. I was lucky, and her love was salvific. I think about an 20th century Indian guru, Maharaj, who said, "Wisdom tells me I am nothing. Wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I am everything. And between the two, my life flows." Holding on to this nugget of wisdom is, for me, personally, salvific. Creativity is salvific. a sense of belonging is salvific. Which leads us in to thinking about and talking about communal salvation. How is it that we might save each other or expand our world even farther? How is it that we might save those who are not here in Granite Peak? I know that's a very unusual thing for a Unitarian Universalist minister to say. Feed the hungry, comfort the grieving, care for the injured or ill, make peace, shelter the refugee. Any of these sound familiar? Yes, I hope so, because these are all things that Granite Peak does. Also, much of it comes from the Sermon on the Mount in the Bible. So maybe Jesus is one route to salvation after all? I'll leave that question with all of you to ponder. Or in more contemporary language and thought, especially in the weeks following Martin Luther King Day and our celebrations of him and Black History Month, how about creating beloved community? Building a better world, creating heaven here on earth. I'll be clear that I'm talking really about salvation here during this lifetime. I'm not addressing the afterlife at all. I think that salvation here during our lifetimes is what would be the most helpful or useful theological or philosophical or spiritual concept for us to consider, especially in these times right now. We all deserve a place of rest, a place of refuge, a place of resistance. This community, this one right here at Granite Peak, is itself salvific. Every time we welcome in someone who is disabled, who is in some way physically is neurodivergent, every time we welcome in someone who is LGBTQ, every time we welcome someone in who is different from the numerical majority out in the larger community, whether that is due to race, racialized identity or ethnic backgrounds or documentation status, all of those things. Every time we welcome in people who don't have much in the way of money and need to access our food pantry, I think the numbers I heard were 40 to 50 people every week. Did I get that right? Yes, okay. 40 to 50 people every week come here for food. This place is salvific. We can, if we want to, reclaim this idea of radical salvation and live it out. Near the conclusion of the Reverend William Ellery Channing's Baltimore Sermon, he cautions the ordinand, Jared Sparks, to remember that good practice is the end of preaching, and to labor to make your people holy livers rather than skillful disputants. It is, I believe, in this holy living, our communal holy living, that we find our salvation, both personal and communal. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Now, you ready to move a little bit? Okay, let's rise either in body or spirit and sing number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed and giving. Love will guide us through the night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep inside you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
We will now extinguish our chalice. Please join me in the words that are on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
In the words of the Reverend William Ellery Channing, may your life preach more loudly than your lips. Amen. Be.